I mean, and that's just absolutely incredible. But the number one thing that I was the most shocked by when I started this podcast, I would have never guessed it in a million years. But for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's
Oh
harder
yeah.
than their
And
nutrition.
it's they neglect it too a
Yep.
lot of
It's
times. A
harder
lot
than
of people.
their diet. It's harder than their working out. I mean, I always like to compare it now to being a perfect driver. You can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Well, that's funny you should ask that. In figure, when I came back, okay, I was like mortified. This is funny because I saw the girls, like when I did figure, you didn't do all this fancy stuff that they do today. You walked out there, you did quarter turn like a robot, and then you went off to the side until they called you. And that for me is comfortable. I like to be a robot. But I came back in it, I was watching the pros, and I'm like, if I try to look like I'm all cute up there, I'm going to look stupid because that's not my personality. So Jeannie told me that that's what they do at the pro level, and at the national level, they probably are not going to want to see a bunch of flair up there. She's like, so just do what we've been working on. And she's brilliant. She's so good at the posing. So I just trust her and I just follow her lead and I practice as much as I can. And I try to, but it's so different when I have to pose with her because she can make the corrections if I'm standing, like if you're leaning too far forward, if you're standing upright too much, like it all affects how your back is going to look. And then figure, they want you to have a very wide back and your shoulders around so your arms almost like hang out in front, like they're not doing anything. It's a lot different now from when I did it before. So I had to relearn because I had to change a lot of what I was doing. So that made it a little challenging, but it's better for me like when I'm on stage at the show because for some reason I end up just pulling it all together versus when I'm in my living room walking around practicing. I'm like, oh, that looks terrible. So I think when I'm out there and you're under the lights and you see the judging panel and the pressure is on you and you watch a couple girls in front of you, that always helps me to not be first. So when I watch a few girls in front of me, it's like, okay, I could do that. Like I see what they're doing, like, okay, that's not so bad.
So out of all the figure poses, what is your favorite figure pose and what is your least favorite figure pose?
My favorite pose is the back pose because that one I feel the most confident in. Believe like my whole posterior chain is my best assets. I think assets. But my least favorite is the side pose because they've changed it, and my right side is a lot different from my left side. So I have to get comfortable because they feel completely different when you're posing them, when you're completely different. So I really just don't like the side pose. Either side. Actually, I'll say the right side pose, the right side.
Well, the best thing about the back pose too is that you can kind of, let your smile down. You don't have to be smiling. You don't have to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm so happy," which is funny enough. One of the guests that I had on last night, she was Australian, and she was talking about how her feedback from her last show. The judge said if she smiled more, she might have placed better. So
Yeah, it's tough.
yeah, that's
And
one of
you're
those things. Yeah.
thinking of so many things while you're posing and you're tensing that it's hard to. And so a lot of times when I'm trying to force that smile, I feel like my lips start shaking. And I'm like, oh, I hope they can't see this. This is terrible.
Well, and another thing that I would have never guessed too is that a lot of these posing sessions that competitors go through, they get more sore than they do after a normal workout usually, and
Oh,
after shows, you're usually the most sore that you've ever been. Just because, I mean, we've had guests that have been up there for like 50 minutes just standing there and doing poses, and the body is not designed to do that, to be flexing, all the
and
time.
if
Yep.
you cramp in your calves or something, oh, holy mercy, that is like the worst pain you could possibly feel. It's awful. So I focus on that too. It's like, oh, don't get a cramp, don't get a cramp.
Yep.
But you know what? I'll tell you a story really quick. When I won the Emerald Cup 2004, this was really funny because how you mentioned if they smiled more. When I got to that show, now back then, like I said, there was no internet. You didn't know how big the shows were, and I didn't know that was the largest amateur show that they have. Okay, it's the most prestigious amateur show. So I came off of a fourth place finish at the Vegas in November, and I felt completely robbed because the whole way the show went down, I just felt like I should have placed higher. So I was kind of bitter. And my training partner back then, he also did it. And I said, I want to go do this show in Washington. So he was like, I'll go with you, which was cool. So he went with me. And I did not like how I looked when I got there. I was like, I don't look as good as I did in at the Vegas. I was a lot leaner. I just didn't feel good. So when we were walking to the event, I'll never forget, he goes to me, he said, Lisa, quit talking about it because nobody here cares what you look like in November. He goes, this is how you look now. And that it's too late. And I was just like, so I was just like all upset. So we get to the venue, and it was the first time I'd ever done a show that was 2 days long. So it was Friday night that they did figure, and then Saturday was going to be bodybuilding. So I was up first. So we checked in and everything. And then I told myself before I went on stage, I said, you know what? Nobody knows me here. Why don't I just act like I think I look like the best I've ever looked? And why don't I just go out there and just pretend? And that's exactly what I did. And when I walked out there, my energy completely changed. I made myself feel extremely happy to be up there. And I said, you work really hard. So what? Just go out there and have fun. And that's what I did. And damn it, first time they said my number and said in the center. And right there, especially back then, that's how they did it. When they put you in the middle, you knew you're the one that they're looking at for first. So I was just like, oh, I've never been called in the center before. Oh my God, oh my God. So I was so excited. And I think that just made I think it made me look better because I felt so much more confident. And I think even if you don't like that fake it till you make it, even if you don't think, this girl looks better than me. And I thought the girl that took second, I thought she did look better than me. She was leaner than me. But her posing was off. She did quarter turn to the left when they said right. She did a couple things and she posed kind of like awkwardly, like a monkey kind of. So she didn't really present her body to the best. So I think that was definitely a huge advantage for me. And then that's why I ultimately won my class. So that made me feel like amazing. And there was 22 girls in my class.